All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to anyone that has just joined. We are working on the week 2 perform assignment. Thank you to those who are letting me know whether or not you are completing with me or if you are simply listening along. Either one is fine. Stephanie, we still are currently having storms, so um hopefully we do not get cut off. I did not want to prolong this another day because you all are doing your assignments and I hate to push back a live chat as it is. Um but the fact that we already have had to reschedule once, I don't want to have to do that again. So um it's not as windy as it was yesterday. And we haven't had any actual power outages. We had one internet outage earlier, but outside of that, we've been okay. So hopefully, even though it is raining and storming now, we'll be able to get through this live chat, and then I won't have to worry about connecting to the internet or anything like that. But thank you so much for your well wishes, everyone who messaged me as well. This typically happens. I am in a southern state. And while the state that I'm in doesn't have like natural disasters, frequent natural disasters, a lot of times we catch either what is coming through Florida or headed to Florida, or we catch what is coming through the Carolinas or headed to the Carolinas because I'm in Georgia. So it's kind of like a middle space. It's hard to explain. Or if there are storms coming from Tennessee. And depending on what side of Georgia you live on, the storms could be really great or they could be very few far in between. So it just so happens where I am, it has been raining nonstop here for the last 2 weeks, and hopefully it will let up sooner rather than later. Um, okay, so we are completing the unit to perform. We do have 2 questions to complete. They are both, tax returns, and so we're going to work our way through these 2 questions. And you of course have 3 attempts, but then you have 3 check my works per question. So since we have 2 questions, technically there's 3 check my works per each one. um and so we will go ahead and get started. This says, and I usually don't read the text that is in the red because it's literally the same every single time. So it's no point to read it again. But Hiroshi and Mizuki Sakamoto are married, filing jointly. They are 68 and 66 years old, respectively. They live in Miami, Florida. It looks like they both actually are retired and they collect Social Security benefits. Um, and it also looks like they got 1099 statements from their banks for interest, clearly that they had received from their bank. Um, so they want us to prepare a 1040 plus all the appropriate schedules and worksheets. It does say that they want to contribute to the presidential election campaign. So we'll make sure to check that box. So we're going to start with the preliminary information. Remember, this is quite crucial, especially the way you put in the social security numbers, because if you happen to not use dashes, it's going to mark your other forms incomplete. So just always keep that in mind anytime we are doing this. But the very first name we want to start with is Hiroshi. So remember, you can start typing and the drop down will present itself and you can just select it from there. Last name is Sakamoto. The social that they have given us for this taxpayer is 412-345670. Again, make sure you put the dashes. The spouse is Mizuki. So M-I-Z, we're going to click that drop down. Same last name, Sakamoto. And the social is 412-34-5671. Now, home address, it says that their home address is 1001. So one, and then we'll select it. Northwest 93rd Street, And the city is Miami, Florida. 33168 is the zip. We want to check both boxes here under presidential election campaign for the taxpayer and the spouse. Their taxpayer status or filing status would be married filing jointly. And as always, we have to assume that they did not receive or sell or exchange digital assets such as crypto and things like that. And they don't have any dependents. However, if you did not notice about these particular taxpayers, and I'll show you in the problem, they can't be claimed as a dependent on anybody else's return. However, look at their ages, 68 and 66. It also said that they are retirees, right? So they receive Social Security income, which means if you look at their birth date, one taxpayer is born October 9th, 1955. The spouse is born November 9th, 1957. So you have to do the age and blindness test because it says here to check this box if you were born before January 2nd, 1959, which both of them were. So we're going to check that box for the taxpayer as well as the spouse. And we don't have any information that they're blind, so we don't need to worry about checking those boxes. Now, once you have all of this preliminary information, please let me know in the chat, and then we will move down forward on this 1040. Okay, so it looks like most of you are good to go. Oscar, are you unfortunately, because this is a window within a window, the Zoom capabilities are limited here. So tell me what part of the form you need because we've only gotten this far. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go down to the income portion. And again, something to keep in mind with this particular situation is that these taxpayers are retirees, which means that they don't have traditional W-2 income. Now, what they do have is they have Social Security benefits, which we have to determine whether or not they're even taxable. And they did receive interest from their bank, which is totally taxable. So if we take the interest that they received from their bank, which it looks like Hiroshi received $9,105, and we're going to add that to Mizuki's interest received, which is $7,565. That's a total of 16,670. So we want to place that in box 2B. So in 2B, you should be entering 16,670. If the question, welcome in, Peggy. If the question is why we have an amount in taxable interest, is because this interest was interest income that was earned from their bank that was received on a 1099 form. And so therefore, because it is totally taxable, we have to include it there. And their Social Security benefits. If you go and look at their Social Security benefits that they have there, it looks like Hiroshi received 21,600, and we're going to add that to Mizuki's Social Security, which was 15,600 in terms of income. And then we're going to go down to box 6A here where it says Social Security benefits, and we are going to enter 37,200. So far, as their income is concerned, we have taxable interest of 16,670 and Social Security benefits of 37,200. Let me know in the chat once you have this before we go to the next portion. All right. So before we can go down a little further, you see here for box 6B, taxable amount. This taxable amount is encompassing the Social Security benefits. And the rule, and it was the rule back in 2023 as well, is that typically you have to determine provisional income. And what that means is half of Social Security benefits is usually taxable, plus anything else that you have taxable, such as taxable interest that we have here. So half of 37,200 is, let's see, 37,200 is 18,600. Now, if we take that 18,600, by the way, 18,600 is the taxable portion of Social Security. It means the amount that could be considered for tax, depending on all other factors. Now, if we were only looking at tax on that 37,200, we wouldn't even have to do any calculations because the rule has always technically been up to a certain amount. You don't have to pay Social Security, tax on Social Security. And I think back in 2023, it was like 32,000. But because this is not the only amount of technical income that we have for this taxpayer, we do have to calculate the actual taxable amount. So up to half is eligible to be taxable for Social Security benefits, which we know is 18,600 here. And also we have our taxable interest of 16,670. So if we add 18,600 plus the 16,670, we're going to get a total of 35,270. Now, usually there is a threshold, right? The threshold back in 2023, as I stated, if it was $32,000 or less, there was no tax to be calculated because it was not taxable at that point. From $32,000 and $32,001 up to $44,000, that's about 50% taxable. And anything greater than 44,000 is definitely up to 85% taxable. So what we're saying is we fall within the 50% rule, if you will. So what you would do is you would take your 35,270 that we calculated, and you would subtract out 32,000, which is the portion that is not taxable, right? And so let's do that. 35,270 minus 32,000 is a total of 3,270. And if you multiply that by the 50% that is taxable, that's going to give you $1,635. Now, I am going to post an announcement, just like I did another problem for practice, breaking this down again so you understand how you need to calculate tax on Social Security benefits, whether it is the benefits alone or whether it is benefits plus something else, okay? And it may take for you to watch this recording a couple of times. We don't know, but you at least needed to know how to get there. So the amount that you need to place in box 6B is 1,635. All right. Now, once you have that amount, something else to remember, and I know you're like, oh my goodness, it's just way too many things to remember, and I understand that. Hence why we have these sessions, hence why we break it down the best way we can. In 2023, if you were a retiree, as far as the standard deduction was concerned, they were allotting an additional $3,000 for, I'm sorry, it wasn't 3,000, it was technically 1,500, I believe, per retiree back in 2023, additional for standard deduction. So not only would you get the normal standard deduction amount, but if you were of age and a retiree, there was an additional 1,500 tacked on to the standard deduction. So in this case, we have two taxpayers. So we're talking about an extra $3,000 on top of the standard deduction. So for married filing jointly, the standard deduction is 27,700. And if we tack on the extra 3,000 because these are retirees, we get a total of 30,700. I want you to place 30,700 here on line 12. All right. Confirm that you have this. And because these are Social Security benefit recipients, there is no taxable income to be calculated here. So please confirm that you have this portion before we go to page 2 of the 1040. Oscar, you said you had a question. What's your question? Yes, every single week you are required to do the prepare, the practice, and the perform assignments. In line 9, you have that means you need to go and check what you have in box 2B, 6A, and 6B, Oscar. Peggy, my response to your question is yes, you have to complete the prepare, practice, and perform assignments each week. Oscar, can you confirm that you have these exact same amounts in these exact same boxes on your 1040, like what you see here on the screen? All right. You're welcome. So we're going to go to page 2 of this 1040. Yes, Stephanie, you can go ahead and ask your question. So we're going to click next and go to the 1040 page 2. And surprisingly, on this 1040 page 2, your question is, should line 2B be in line 2A? No. So let's go back. 2A is tax exempt interest. No income that they received is necessarily tax exempt. The Social Security benefits, had they been on their own, they would not be taxable because they clearly fall within the range of being not taxable. However, they didn't just have Social Security benefits, they also had taxable interest. So that changed things, which means they do have an actual taxable amount on line 6B. No problem. All right. So page 2, there is actually nothing to do here on page 2. Why? Because there is no tax to be applied for these taxpayers because we already broke that down on the front page. Now we want to go to Schedule B because we have to have this complete, and it's so on Schedule B. Both of them received interest from the same bank, which is CD Bank. Okay. Hiroshi received 9,105 and Mizuki received 7,565. So please confirm you have this before I go down to the bottom of the form because we have 2 questions to answer at the very bottom. I'm sorry, Gloria, to hear that. I know that makes it more complicated when it keeps kicking you out. All right. So if you have this, all you need to do at this point is go to the very bottom for the two questions, and all it is asking is at any time, did you have financial interest in or signature authority over financial accounts in a foreign country? We're going to select no. And the second question, number 8, during 2023, did you receive a distribution from or were you the grantor or transfer to a foreign trust? We're going to select no for that as well. And once you have that and confirm that, I am going to do check my work on my end. You don't have to do it. But I am going to do it on my end. So the names and the info, that part is in the very top of the problem. They give you that. So I'm going to go back to page 1. Here is the preliminary information that you need to have as far as their names, the address, the city, state, and zip, as well as their socials. Filing status is married filing jointly. And you need to be sure to check these two boxes for presidential election campaign, and also check the box no for digital assets, and also check that both the taxpayer and the spouse were born before January 2nd, 1959. If you could just confirm when you have this information, and then we're going to go to the next problem. Stephanie, that's correct. It's nothing on page 2. Victoria, same thing. It's nothing on page 2. Oscar, yes, they're spouses. They have the same last names, different first names. All right, so I'm gonna hit check my work. Page 3, or are you referring to Schedule B? Is this what you're referring to? Okay, thank you, Gloria. You're welcome. All right, so I'm gonna hit check my work, and so that way you don't have to do it. Let's just make sure everything is complete, and it shows complete and correct. So we're good there. So we're gonna go over to problem 2. And this is also a 1040, but no schedules, which makes it a lot easier. And so this says that John and Martha Holloway are married, filing jointly. They're 35 and 31 years old, respectively. Their address is in Atlanta, Georgia. And it looks like John had W-2 wages, and so did Martha. They also have a 1099 DIV, which is for dividends. Um, just Martha, received dividends from her brokerage, and it looks like she also received some interest from her bank and paid taxes on said interest. And it says John is a maintenance worker and Martha is a human resource manager. And so we are to complete a 1040. They want to contribute to the presidential election campaign, so we need to make sure that we select that information. So we'll start with the preliminary information as we always do. Very first spouse to list is John Holloway. And the social for him is 412-34-5670. His spouse is Martha Holloway. And that social is 412-34-5671. Their home address is 1001 Dove Street. And this is Atlanta, Georgia 30294. And we want to make sure we select their filing status as married filing jointly. And we also want to be sure to check both of these boxes under the presidential election campaign. So please confirm that you have this before we move down a little further on this form. Oscar, you can just go and start another attempt if you have to. All right. You don't have to apologize, Victoria. I understand some people are getting kicked out altogether. So if you accidentally submitted your work, you have two more attempts. You can just go back and you know, open up a new attempt. All right, so now we're going to go down a little further, and no one else can claim these taxpayers as dependents, and we don't have to do the age and blindness test. They're in their 30s. But what we do need to do is check this box no for the digital assets. So where it says at any time during 2023, did you receive, sell, exchange, or otherwise dispose of a digital asset? That we need to check that box no. All right, so now we can move down to the income portion. And remember, they don't have anything crazy as far as income is concerned. They both have W-2 income. And so wages, John had 22,198 plus Martha of 35,500, which totals 57,698. So that's what you need to put in box 1A, 57,698. Yes, I'll go back and check it later. All right. Once you have that W-2 income on line 1A there, you would want to come down to line 3A here, which deals with qualified dividends. And it's stated in the problem that she received, Martha specifically received the dividend statement, and the amount of dividends that she received were 345. So we're going to enter 345 on 3A, and we're also going to enter that same amount on 3B, because not only was it an ordinary dividend, it's also a qualified dividend in terms of being taxable. And so once you enter 345 on inbox 3A and 3B, she also had taxable interest from her bank of 450. So you want to enter that on inbox 2B. So you should have exactly the same thing that I have here, inbox 2B, 3B, and 3A. So please, once you confirm that you have all of these things, then we'll move forward. All right, so now we're going to go down a little further to the bottom of the form. And this one is pretty simple. We're going to apply standard deduction for married filing jointly, which is simply 27,700. So you want to place that on line 12 or in box 12. And then, of course, line 15, for us to determine taxable income, we are going to subtract line 14 from line 11. So 58,493 minus 27,700 gives us 30,793 to place on line 15. So confirm you have everything at the bottom half of this 1040, and then we'll move forward to page 2. Okay, Victoria, what lines do you need? This first half, or first half as in problem information, preliminary information? All right. So when we go to page 2 of the 1040, we need to determine their tax. Now, I will say for this particular problem, we're going to go through and navigate through to show you the tax on the table. However, you're going to notice that the amount that they give you versus what the actual correct answer is different. And as I mentioned last week, and I'll always mention it as long as we are in class, is that when these textbooks are published, it may or may not be published either after the final tables have been finalized with the IRS for that tax year, or it may be before. And typically, when it is before, that means that those tax tables are off. It's not a tremendous amount, but it's off. And so we're going to end up seeing that in this situation. So if we think about the taxable income that we reported on line 15, which was on page 1 of the 1040, taxable income is 30,793. Married filing jointly is the second column, and we're going to go down to that range of the 30,000s, which happens to be here. And 30,793 is more than 30,750, but less than 30,800. Married filing jointly, it says that their tax should be 3,253 here. Now, that's according to the tax table that they linked in this problem. What the IRS table actually shows is that it should be 3,211, hence why we do these things in class. So on your box 16 of your 1040 page 2, you need to enter 3,211. Now from there, if we go down to line 22 where it says to subtract line 21 from 18, we're simply going to bring down that 3,211 again. All right. And as far as the payments, federal income tax withheld on their W-2, if we add both John and Martha, John's federal withholdings were 1,500, plus Martha's federal withholdings for the year were 3,100. So that's 4,600 to place on or in box 25A. And if you remember also from the problem, the interest that was paid from Martha's bank that was on the 1099 INT, she paid box 4, which is for federal tax withheld, was $35. So we need to place that in box 25B. All right. Please confirm you have everything that you see on the screen right here before we complete and close out this problem. All right, so now we're going to complete this tax return by going down to line 34, where it says to subtract line 24 from 33. Our line 24 is 3,211. So 4,635 minus 3,211 gives us 1,424. You're going to place this number on line 34 as well as line 35A. Please confirm you have this, and I'm going to do check my work. You don't have to if you're not ready, and I don't want you to, mistakenly submit anything. So be very careful. All right. If you're not ready to actually complete it, please don't click any buttons. But I am going to hit check my work once everybody confirms that they have this, just to make sure that we are complete. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit check my work. Let's see if there's anything to correct. Uh, and it looks like it is not. So we're good to go here. And we're a couple of minutes over, and I apologize for that. I'm probably more glad that we didn't get disconnected in the process of this. So I will be sending out an announcement with an example about how to calculate taxable Social Security, et cetera. And this recording should be available to you probably a few minutes after we disconnect here. In doing the prepare, when I start, it says I had 14 questions, but it only allowed me to do 4 to 5 before kicking me and grading me. No, that is not how that's supposed to work. So if you are, my only suggestion with that is if you are preparing, if you are completing the prepare assignment and it kicks you out, do not access it yet again. I would definitely contact support if you feel like that is an issue, and let them go in and look at it. Okay. First before you access another attempt. That way you don't waste through your attempts. As for everyone, we are going to go ahead and disconnect. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and your weekend. We'll see each other back here next week. And, or maybe possibly if you join the office hours, you might be in there. I'm not sure. But at any rate, thank you so much for staying over and for your participation as well. Also, don't forget to message me should yours say incomplete. Um, yes, so you would need to contact support because it's not supposed to shut you out. You have 3 attempts every assignment. And if you're saying you were completing it and in the midst of you completing only a few questions, it shut it down and submitted it. That's not normal, which means I would not access that again. I would contact support to make sure everything looks okay on their end. They may even recommend that you choose a different internet browser to use because Connect is very finicky with certain internet browsers as well. Yes, you do have to answer all concepts. Any assignment you do, whether it is prepare, practice, or perform, you are required to complete every question that it shows. And I do know that the prepare, I believe, definitely is like 50 concepts, but you're expected to go through all 50 of those concepts. And if you don't go through 50 of those concepts, it's going to grade you on the portion that you did complete. All right. Um, Patricia, let me see. If I can pull up your first question and figure out what you may be missing. Everyone else is free to log out if you don't have a question. Let's see here. Um, Thank you, you as well. Okay, let me go in and see if I can see what might potentially be going on with yours. You as well. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Let's see here.